The doorbell rang at exactly 7:30 on Christmas Eve, and I knew immediately something was wrong. Nobody rings doorbells at 7:30 on Christmas Eve in Charleston unless they're lost or up to something. I was standing in my kitchen, surrounded by enough food for 6 people even though I'd be eating alone, when I heard it. The sound cut through Bing Crosby crooning about white Christmases and made my stomach drop in that specific way that tells you your life is about to get complicated. My name is Rebecca. I'm 47 years old, a high school English teacher at Porter God School, and until about 3 minutes ago, I thought I had successfully convinced everyone, including myself, that I was perfectly fine spending Christmas alone. What I didn't know as I walked toward that door, wine glass in hand and forced smile on my face, was that my daughter had orchestrated something so breathtakingly misguided that by midnight, I would be questioning everything I thought. I knew about trust, loneliness, and the lies we tell ourselves about being okay. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that door, I need you to understand something about how YouTube works. The algorithm decides who gets to see the ending of this story based on one thing: engagement. If you're not subscribed, if you don't leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, YouTube assumes you're not interested and stops showing you the content. I've seen people spend hours searching for part 2 of stories they never got to finish. Don't let that be you. Subscribe right now. Comment your city below. Because what happens in the next 48 hours? You won't believe it even when I tell you. So let me take you back 6 months, because that's when this really started, even though I didn't see it coming. My daughter Emma moved to Portland in August for graduate school. 23 years old, brilliant, stubborn as hell, all the things I raised her to be. The divorce from her father had been finalized 2 years earlier, and honestly, it had been brutal. Not the screaming kind of brutal, but the slow erosion kind, where you wake up one day and realize you've been sleeping next to a stranger for 15 years. When Emma left for Portland, the house went from quiet to silent. That's when the neighbors started noticing. I live in a small neighborhood off Folly Road, the kind of place where everyone knows when you get your mail and who's dating who. The house next door had been empty for months until Dylan moved in sometime in September. I noticed him the way you notice anyone new on a street where nothing ever changes, casually, without much interest. He was younger than me, maybe late 30s, with the kind of easy smile that probably got him out of trouble more often than it should. He worked from home, something with computers, and he had a dog named Murphy who barked at squirrels every morning at 6. Our first real conversation happened in October when Murphy got loose and ended up in my backyard, digging up what remained of my azaleas. Dylan came running over, apologetic and slightly out of breath, and I found myself laughing for the first time in weeks. He had this way of talking that made everything seem less serious, less heavy. We started saying hello when we both got our mail. Then hello turned into brief conversations about the weather. Then the weather turned into longer talks about nothing in particular. I didn't think anything of it. I was a middle-aged woman whose life revolved around lesson plans and lonely dinners. The idea that someone like Dylan, someone who looked like he did, who moved through the world with that kind of confidence, would be interested in me seemed absurd. But then the little things started adding up. He'd bring over his extra tomatoes from the farmer's market because I bought too many. He'd ask if I needed help carrying in groceries when he saw me struggling with bags. One evening in November, my porch light burned out, and before I could even get the ladder from the garage, he was there with his own ladder, changing the bulb, waving away my thanks like it was nothing. Emma called every Sunday night. We'd talk for an hour, her asking about school and my students, me asking about her classes and her roommates. In late November, she started asking about Dylan. The neighbor guy? Mom, you've mentioned him like 4 times. Have I? I set down my wine glass, suddenly self-conscious. I didn't realize. Is he single? Emma. What? I'm just asking. You said he brings you vegetables and fixes your porch light. That's very boyfriend behavior. He's being neighborly. That's different. Is it, though? I changed the subject, but the question stuck with me. Was it different? And more importantly, did I want it to be? The week before Christmas, Dylan invited me to a holiday party his company was throwing. I said no immediately. Too awkward, too presumptuous, too everything. But he was persistent in that gentle way of his. And eventually, I ran out of excuses that didn't make me sound pathetic. It's just a party, Rebecca. Free food, decent wine, minimal small talk required. You'd be doing me a favor. I hate going to these things alone. I almost believed him. The party was at some upscale restaurant downtown, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs and a bar that stretched the entire length of the room. I wore the black dress I'd bought for parent-teacher conferences, the one that made me feel like I was trying too hard and not trying hard enough all at once. Dylan met me outside, and when he saw me, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. It made me stand a little straighter. Inside, he introduced me to his coworkers, his hand occasionally touching my lower back to guide me through the crowd. We drank too much wine. We laughed at things that probably weren't that funny. At one point, standing by the bar, he leaned in close to tell me something about his boss, and I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive, and feel the warmth of his breath against my ear. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, and the words hit me like a physical thing. I wanted to believe him so badly it scared me. We left around 11, both of us tipsy and laughing about nothing, and he drove me home even though we'd both had too much to drink. At my door, there was this moment. You know the moment I'm talking about. The one where time seems to stop and you can feel every possible future hanging in the balance. He was standing close, too close, and I was looking up at him, and every single warning bell in my head was going off. "Rebecca," he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like something precious. "Don't," I whispered, even though I didn't mean it. He kissed me anyway. Soft and careful at first, like he was asking permission, and when I kissed him back, something inside me cracked open. It had been so long since anyone had touched me like that, like I was someone worth wanting. That was 10 days ago. Since then, he'd been over every night. We'd have dinner, watch old movies, talk about everything and nothing. He never pushed for more than I was willing to give, but the possibility hung between us like smoke. Emma called that Sunday, and I didn't mention Dylan at all. It felt too new, too fragile, too much like hope. Which brings me back to Christmas Eve, to that doorbell at 7:30, to the moment everything fell apart. I opened the door expecting Dylan. Instead, I found Emma. She was standing on my porch in jeans and her Portland State sweatshirt, a duffel bag at her feet, and the kind of expression that told me she'd driven straight through the night to get here. "Surprise," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Emma, what are you? I thought you weren't coming home until New Year's." "Change of plans." She picked up her bag and pushed past me into the house. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay? Are you sick? Did something happen?" "I'm fine, Mom. But yeah, something happened." She set her bag down and turned to face me. "Dylan's coming over tonight, right? How did you—" "Because I'm the one who hired him to ask you out." The room tilted. I grabbed the back of the couch to steady myself. "What?" Emma's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It started as this stupid, well-meaning thing, and then it got completely out of hand." "You hired him?" My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. You paid someone to pretend to be interested in me? It wasn't supposed to be like that. I was worried about you, Mom. You sounded so lonely on the phone, and I hated the thought of you spending Christmas alone. So I found this service online. It's supposed to be for companionship, just someone to have dinner with, go to movies with. Nothing romantic. But then Dylan actually started coming over, and you started sounding happy again, and I thought maybe I'd actually done something good. Until when? I asked, my voice shaking. Until when was he supposed to keep pretending? January 2nd. That was the contract end date. So after New Year's, he was just going to disappear? Mom. And the party? The kiss? All of that was just him fulfilling his contract? Emma's silence was answer enough. I sat down hard on the couch, my mind racing through every interaction, every smile, every touch. Had any of it been real? Or had I been so desperate for connection that I'd convinced myself a paid companion actually cared? The doorbell rang again. Dylan. Don't answer it, Emma said. But I was already walking toward the door, my hands trembling. I needed to see his face. I needed to know if there was any part of this that had been real, even if the answer destroyed me. I opened the door. Dylan stood there with a bottle of wine, and that smile I'd grown to anticipate, the one that made me feel like maybe I wasn't invisible, after all. Hey, he said. I brought the Merlot you... He stopped, seeing my face. Then he looked past me and saw Emma. His expression changed instantly, all the warmth draining away, replaced by something that looked like panic. Rebecca, I can explain. Can you? I stepped back, letting him see my face clearly. Can you explain why my daughter had to hire someone to pretend to care about me? Can you explain how much of this was real? He opened his mouth, closed it, put the wine bottle down on the porch railing. That's what I thought, I said, and started to close the door. Wait. He put his hand on the door. You're right. Emma hired me. The service is called Companions Unlimited. And yes, I was paid to take you to that party. But Rebecca, please listen to me. I don't want to hear it. Everything after that first night was real. His voice cracked. I was supposed to be done after the party. That was the job. One date. Make sure you had someone to spend an evening with. End of contract. But then I kissed you, and it wasn't part of any script. I came back the next night because I wanted to, not because anyone was paying me. I've spent the last week and a half terrified you'd find out how this started, because I didn't want to lose you. You should have told me. Tears were streaming down my face now. The second it became real, you should have told me. I know. You're absolutely right. I'm a coward and an idiot, and I'm so sorry. He took a breath. But I'm also completely in love with you, and I'm begging you not to let the way this started destroy what we actually have. Behind me, I heard Emma make a small sound. I turned to look at her, and she was crying too. I ruined everything, she whispered. I was trying to help, and I ruined everything. I looked between them, my daughter who loved me enough to make a terrible decision, and the man who'd been paid to pretend but stayed because he chose to. Two people who'd hurt me, yes, but who'd also given me something I'd forgotten I could have. The feeling of being wanted, of being worth the effort. Both of you, I said slowly, are going to spend the next however many hours it takes explaining exactly how this happened. Every detail, every conversation, every decision. And then I'm going to decide if I can forgive either of you. Dylan nodded immediately. Anything. Whatever you need. Emma crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. I'm so sorry, Mom. I just wanted you to be happy. I held her tight, breathing in her familiar smell. Still the same shampoo she'd used in high school. I know, baby. I know. We spent Christmas Eve at my kitchen table, the three of us, going through the whole story. Emma explained how she'd found the service, how she'd interviewed Dylan herself over the phone to make sure he seemed nice and normal, how she'd paid extra for him to live next door so it would seem more organic. Dylan explained how he'd actually been between jobs and needed the money, how the service was supposed to be completely platonic, how he'd broken his contract when he kissed me because some things matter more than money. It was messy and painful and honest in ways I hadn't expected. Around midnight, Emma fell asleep with her head on the table, exhausted from the drive and the crying. Dylan and I were left alone in the kitchen, the weight of everything hanging between us. I meant what I said, he told me quietly. I love you. I know I have no right to say that, given how this started, but it's true. How do I trust that? I asked. How do I know what's real? You don't. Not yet. But I'm willing to spend as long as it takes proving it to you. He reached across the table, palm up, offering. If you'll let me. I looked at his hand, the same hand that had changed my porch light, that had guided me through that party, that had held mine in the dark. The hand of someone who'd been paid to care, but chose to stay anyway. I took it. 3 months later, Emma came home for spring break. Dylan and I had spent those months slowly, carefully rebuilding trust. He'd moved into my house in February, but we both knew we were still figuring things out. Some days were harder than others. Some days I'd look at him and wonder what was real and what was performance. But he was patient, showing up consistently, loving me in the small, unglamorous ways that you can't fake. The evening Emma arrived, the three of us had dinner on the back porch, Murphy asleep at our feet. Emma looked between us, seeing something in the way we moved around each other, and smiled. You guys are going to make it, aren't it? She asked. Dylan looked at me, and I looked back at him. We were a 47-year-old teacher, and a guy who'd been hired to like her, and none of this made sense on paper. But love rarely does. Yeah, I said. I think we are. Emma raised her glass. To terrible decisions with good intentions. And to staying even when you don't have to, Dylan I added. I touched my glass to theirs, the sound ringing out clear in the Charleston evening air. To second chances. We drank to that, to the messy, complicated, impossible beauty of being seen and choosing to stay anyway. To my daughter who loved me enough to meddle, and to the man who was paid to pretend but loved me for real, to the life I'd thought was over, and the one that was just beginning.